Before anyone is trusted with secrets, before missions, before training, they are judged. Not by what they say, not by what they know, but by how their mind leaks information under pressure. Most people believe spy selection is about intelligence. Some think it's about bravery. Others imagine physical endurance. That belief alone would already disqualify them. Because the most important tests are never announced as tests. They feel like conversations. They feel like waiting. They feel like nothing. And that's where most people fail. Ask yourself one question as you watch this. Would you even realize you were being tested? Stay till the end, because the most dangerous part of these tests is not how difficult they are. It's how ordinary they feel. Before you continue, don't just watch this, participate. As this video unfolds, imagine you are the candidate being evaluated. If at any moment you feel uncomfortable, impatient, or mentally exposed, comment the word "tested." No explanations. Just that one word. Because the people who fail these psychological tests are usually the ones who think they're unaffected. And if this kind of psychological breakdown interests you, subscribe. Because this channel is not about motivation. It's about understanding how the human mind is judged under pressure. Share this with someone who believes they're mentally unshakable. Let's see if they still think that after watching. The real purpose of psychological selection isn't about finding perfection. It's about eliminating risk. Recruiters are not looking for heroes. They are looking for predictable minds under uncertainty. A candidate who panics is dangerous. A candidate who overthinks is dangerous. A candidate who wants approval is dangerous. So instead of asking, "Can you do this?" they observe, what happens to you when nothing makes sense? That is the core of psychological selection. Test number 1 is the confusion environment. This is one of the earliest psychological filters. Instructions are vague. Rules change without warning. Information is incomplete, and sometimes it's even contradictory. Most people respond in predictable ways. They seek reassurance, they ask too many questions, they become visibly frustrated, or they freeze completely. None of this is accidental. Confusion is designed to reveal emotional dependency, need for control, ego attachment, and stress tolerance. The biggest mistake candidates make here is trying to look competent. Competence is not the goal. Composure is. Those who rush to fix the confusion expose their anxiety. Those who wait calmly expose their resilience. So remember, in real life, confusion is not your enemy. Your reaction to confusion is. Next is test number 2, the silence trap. Silence is one of the most powerful psychological tools ever used in selection. Candidates are left waiting. There's no feedback, no confirmation, no emotional response. Minutes feel like hours. Some people start talking just to fill the void. Others shift, they fidget, they adjust their posture. Some smile nervously while others grow irritated. Every single reaction is data. Silence exposes insecurity, a need for validation, and a low tolerance for uncertainty. The strongest minds do nothing. They don't perform. They don't explain. They don't try to entertain the silence. The takeaway here is simple. If silence makes you uncomfortable, pressure already owns you. Let's move on to the third test. The over-explanation filter. Candidates are often asked simple questions, questions the evaluators already know the answers to. The trap isn't the question itself. The trap is how much you say. Most people believe that more detail equals more credibility. Psychologically, the opposite is often true. Over-explaining signals anxiety, a fear of being misunderstood, and a desire to control perception. On the other hand, calm, precise answers signal confidence and internal stability. Evaluators are watching your sentence length, the speed of your response, and your emotional tone. Remember, the more nervous you are, the longer your answers tend to become. Test number 4 is the emotional probe. At some point, a personal topic will appear. not aggressively, not obviously. It might be a memory, a value, a belief. The goal is not to trigger emotion. The goal is to spot emotional leakage. Does your voice change? Does your posture shift? Do your words accelerate? Having strong emotional reactions isn't a sign of weakness, but uncontrolled emotion reveals instability. You don't fail because you feel something. You fail because it controls you. Then we have test number 5, the moral conflict scenario. Candidates are given dilemmas with no clean answer. Every option is uncomfortable. Every answer has consequences. What matters here is not your morality, it's your rigidity. Extreme moral certainty is a red flag. But so is emotional detachment without any reasoning. Recruiters are observing your flexibility, your ability to reason under discomfort, and your emotional balance. Real strength is holding complexity without collapsing into absolute certainty. Test number 6 is observation misdirection. Candidates are exposed briefly to environments, people, or information. Later, unexpectedly, questions appear. But here's the twist. They are not testing your memory. They are testing your assumptions. Most people confidently remember things that were never there. And false certainty is far more dangerous than ignorance. The human mind fills gaps automatically, and it confidently lies to itself in the process. The 7th and final test we'll cover is the authority pressure test. This involves conflicting instructions from contradictory authority figures. One person says, "Do this." Another says, "Don't do that." Most people default to one of two things: blind obedience or emotional resistance. But what's actually being observed is your reasoning, your internal stability, and your decision-making under social pressure. Pressure doesn't test your intelligence, it tests your independence. Now, here's the most shocking part. The part most people never realize. The test doesn't end. In fact, it never officially begins. From the moment you enter the environment, you are already being evaluated. How you walk, how you wait, how you react when nothing is happening. By the time people try to perform well, the decision has often already been made. So, why do most people fail? It's not because they are weak. It's not because they are unintelligent. They fail because they want to impress, they want certainty, they want control, and they want approval. Selection psychology is designed to punish all 4 of those desires. Can these traits be built? Some can. Some require deep self-awareness. What matters most is developing comfort with uncertainty, emotional regulation, silent confidence, and psychological patience. These are not flashy skills, and that's precisely why most people never develop them. The difference between those selected and those rejected is rarely visible. It exists in the pauses, in restraint, in reactions that no one thinks matter, and that the uncomfortable truth. Most people fail psychological selection without ever realizing they were being tested. So the real question is not, could you pass these tests? It's this: would you even notice them happening? Have you ever wondered what happens in the final stages of a selection process for elite roles? It's not about what you do, it's about what emerges when you stop trying. Most people think selection is about interviews, tests, and tasks. But once the obvious candidates are filtered out, the real evaluation begins. The process becomes quieter, slower, and far more intense. At this stage, you're no longer being evaluated through questions. You're being evaluated through patterns of behavior, reaction, and self-control. This is where the deep psychological work starts. At a certain point, the active testing stops. There are fewer questions, less interaction, and longer, uncomfortable pauses. Most candidates think the pressure is off. They relax, but the opposite is true. The evaluators are no longer testing what you can do. They're observing who you are at your baseline. How do you behave when nothing is demanded of you, no feedback is given, and no performance is required? This phase reveals your true self, the person you are when there's nothing to perform for. This is where many people unknowingly sabotage themselves. They get too comfortable, they overcompensate with nervous energy, or they reveal deep-seated impatience and entitlement. The absence of pressure becomes the ultimate pressure. It's a psychological paradox. You see, evaluators aren't looking at single actions. One reaction means nothing. 3 similar reactions could be a coincidence. But 5 consistent reactions reveal a pattern. And predictability is a liability. A predictable person can be manipulated, pressured, or outmaneuvered. This alone can be enough to disqualify you. What they're looking for is incredibly rare. Consistency without rigidity, calm without passivity, and control without suppression. Most people fail because their internal noise, their anxieties and insecurities leaks out. Think about your internal dialogue. Right now, you might be wondering, am I doing okay? What do they think of me? Was that a mistake? This inner chatter doesn't stay inside your head. It leaks out through micro-expressions, shifts in posture, your breathing rhythm, and the pacing of your speech. The mind cannot hide what it's constantly rehearsing. Those with strong psychological discipline show something different: mental stillness. Their attention is focused outward, on the environment, not trapped in a loop of self-evaluation. It's not an empty mind, but a quiet one. Another layer of this psychological game involves time. Waiting periods are intentionally made uneven. Schedules become ambiguous. Events are delayed without any explanation. This creates what's known as time distortion. Some candidates become irritated. Others get anxious. Many try to regain control by asking questions or forcing an interaction. All of this reveals how dependent you are on external structure. A strong mind regulates its own sense of time internally. A weaker mind demands it from the outside. The ability to remain stable when time itself feels broken is a critical skill in high uncertainty environments. Then comes the social mirror test. You're placed in a room with other candidates. Nothing competitive, just proximity. But the observation is constant. Do you immediately start comparing yourself to others? Do you seek their validation? Do you try to assert dominance, or do you withdraw and try to become invisible? Your social instincts are laid bare. Constantly positioning yourself reveals deep insecurity. Disappearing completely reveals avoidance. The ideal profile sits quietly in the middle, present, neutral, and unreactive. Not invisible, just unbothered by the social dynamics around them. The stress applied at this stage is also different. It's not a huge, dramatic test. It's injected in tiny, almost unnoticeable ways. A slightly delayed response from an evaluator. A sudden, minor change to a rule. An unexpected correction on a small detail. These micro-stresses are far more revealing than extreme pressure. Why? Because when stress is extreme, you can justify your reaction. Anyone would have cracked under that pressure, you tell yourself. But you can't excuse a sharp, angry reaction to a small disruption. It signals a low emotional tolerance. The evaluators are looking for those whose nervous systems barely even register minor chaos. Many candidates believe composure means having control, but the real test is deeper. Can you function without any control at all? Situations are deliberately designed where you cannot influence the outcome. Speed things up or get the clarity you crave. People who need to be in control become visibly unsettled. Their calm is conditional. It only exists when they're in the driver's seat. But those who pass this test remain internally organized even when they are externally powerless. This distinction, the ability to function without control, matters more than raw intelligence. Your identity is also tested. The evaluators will subtly shift your role. One moment you're treated as important. The next, you're irrelevant. Sometimes you're completely ignored. An identity-flexible mind adapts to these shifts quietly. But an identity-attached mind reacts emotionally. If you cling to your status, your need for recognition, or your role, you're showing fragility. True psychological maturity is letting your identity shift without resistance. And what about trust? It's never requested. It's observed. You'll be put in situations where you could give trust or withhold it. Some trust too easily, which is naive. Some trust no one, which is paranoid. Both extremes are dangerous. The ideal is balanced skepticism. Open but not gullible. Cautious but not fearful. It's a trust that adjusts based on evidence, not emotion. Even your energy is being managed and monitored. Not your enthusiasm, but your core energy. Who burns out fast? Who conserves their energy? Who leaks it through emotional outbursts? Excessive emotional output signals poor sustainability. In these high-stakes environments, psychological endurance is far more valuable than short bursts of intensity. They favor those who speak only when necessary, rest when possible, and don't overextend themselves just to impress. But perhaps the most important distinction is self-awareness. You can have a candidate who is brilliant but completely unaware of their own internal state, and another who is average but deeply self-aware. The self-aware candidate almost always wins. Why? Because if you can recognize your own internal states, you can regulate them. If you can't, you become a victim of your own reactions. This isn't about being perfect. It's about correction speed. How fast can you notice yourself drifting off course and adjust? And you have to remember, the evaluation never really ends. People assume it stops after the formal interviews are over. It doesn't. The transitions matter most. How you walk from one room to another. How you behave in the hallway when you think no one is watching. How you respond to a minor inconvenience, like a vending machine being broken. These unguarded moments are often weighted more heavily than the formal tests, because behavior without an audience is behavior without a mask. Ultimately, before any final decision is made, one question dominates the minds of the evaluators. Can this person be trusted with uncertainty? Not danger, not complexity, but pure, undefined uncertainty. Can they operate without constant clarity? Can they function without reassurance? Can they remain stable without validation? Through all these subtle tests, most people unknowingly answer no with their behavior. And this isn't just about elite selection. These same psychological filters are operating every single day in your life and mine. In leadership, in a crisis, in a high-stakes negotiation. We are all judged less by what we say and more by how we exist under pressure and ambiguity. The uncomfortable truth is that your mind reveals itself faster than you can protect it. No matter how smart or prepared you are, your psychological baseline will always show through. The art of selection is simply knowing where to look. By the time the decisions are made, there's no drama. No big announcement. Just quiet conclusions drawn from hundreds of small, seemingly insignificant signals. And the most unsettling part: most people who fail never realize which moment defined them. It wasn't a big mistake. It was a small, unguarded reaction they didn't even think mattered. Ever noticed how some people stay completely calm under pressure, while others just seem to fall apart? It's easy to think they were just born that way. It's a comforting thought because it lets us off the hook. But what if I told you that assumption is wrong? What if the difference between a resilient mind and a fragile one isn't about being fearless, but about how fear is processed? The truth is, psychological stability isn't a personality trait. It's a trained condition. And today, we're going to explore the hidden techniques that create that unshakable calm. Let's start with a fundamental rule. You are not your first reaction. This is one of the most dangerous illusions our minds create. Your first reaction isn't the real you. It's pure biology. Your second reaction? That's psychology. And your third? That's a choice. Untrained minds act on that first biological impulse. Trained minds, however, create a pause between the first and second reaction. It might be less than a second long, but in that tiny gap, control is born. Here's a practical technique to build this skill, called the reaction gap. The next time something triggers you, don't respond immediately. Just let one full breath pass. Inhale, exhale. Simply observe the urge to react without acting on it. That single breath is powerful. It disrupts the emotional momentum that makes us feel so out of control. Most people never learn to interrupt themselves, and that's why they feel like their emotions run their lives. Now, a common mistake is trying to suppress emotions to stay calm, but this always backfires. Suppressed emotion doesn't just disappear, it leaks out. You can see it in a person's tone of voice, their body language, those tiny micro-expressions they can't hide. Real stability doesn't come from suppression. It comes from acknowledging an emotion without obeying it. You notice the feeling, you name it, but you don't follow its command. It's a subtle distinction, but it's incredibly powerful. One of the most effective mental tools used in high-pressure jobs is called the observer position. Instead of getting tangled up asking, "Why am I feeling this way?" you create distance by asking, "What is happening inside me right now?" This simple shift from why to what turns you from a participant into an observer of your own internal state. Distance creates control. Try this technique, internal narration. Silently, just to yourself, label what's happening. Heart rate is increasing. Feeling tension in my shoulders. There's an impulse to speak. When you label an emotion, you turn it into data. And data doesn't control you. It's the unexamined emotions that do. Another huge source of stress is the feeling of incompleteness. Not knowing, not understanding, not having closure. Our minds hate open loops and desperately want to close them. But psychological resilience is built by learning to sit with that ambiguity without rushing to find an answer. People who rush toward certainty often grab onto the wrong one just to feel better. So, practice delaying resolution. When you're facing uncertainty, give yourself permission not to have it all figured out. Tell yourself, "I don't need to resolve this right now." This simple phrase can dramatically reduce impulsive and often poor decisions. Let's talk about silence. Silence makes most people incredibly uncomfortable because it removes all feedback. There's no approval, no rejection, no validation. People who can't tolerate it will rush to fill it, and in doing so, they reveal their neediness, their anxiety, and they tend to over-explain. But those who can remain silent gain a huge informational advantage. They get to observe while everyone else exposes their hand. Here's a technique for that: the silent count. The next time a conversation falls silent, instead of jumping in, just count slowly to 5 in your head. Maintain a relaxed posture and breathe normally. You'll be amazed at how often the conversational pressure just dissolves before you even get to 5. Think of your mind as having an energy economy. Psychological endurance isn't about raw strength. It's about smart energy management. We burn so much mental energy trying to impress others, control outcomes we can't control, or predict what people are thinking. Stable minds don't do this. They conserve their energy by focusing only on what is actually within their control: their response, their attention, and their behavior. Everything else is just noise. So, get in the habit of asking yourself, what part of this situation is actually under my control? And then, learn to mentally let go of the rest. This one habit can prevent so much mental exhaustion and keep you clear-headed when it counts. Confidence is another thing we often get wrong. True psychological confidence is quiet. It doesn't announce itself, it doesn't feel the need to defend itself, and it never rushes. It's often the people who are acting the most confident who are actually masking deep instability. To truly confident, don't need to signal it to anyone. A simple way to practice this is to reduce your signaling. Speak a little less, explain a little less. Let your actions finish the conversation for you. Your confidence will become visible when your need for explanation disappears. Pressure is a great revealer. It doesn't change who you are. It reveals what you truly value. Not the values you talk about, but the ones you live by. Under stress, What do you prioritize? Comfort, control, getting approval, or maintaining your composure? To understand yourself, you need to know this. After a stressful event, do a post-event analysis. Ask yourself, when things got tough, what did I prioritize? What did I try to protect? Your honest answers will show you your real hierarchy of values. And here's a key insight. Resilient minds are not unshaken. They just recover faster. The speed of your emotional recovery matters more than your resistance to getting upset in the first place. Lingering emotions cloud your judgment. A fast recovery restores your clarity. You can train this with a simple reset ritual. After an emotional spike, physically reset your posture. Sit up straight. Roll your shoulders back. Take 3 slow, deep breaths. Then, deliberately shift your attention to a neutral object in the room: a clock, a plant, anything. This simple sequence sends a signal to your nervous system that the threat has passed and it has time to stand down. People love to overcomplicate things, especially control. But real control in the middle of chaos comes from simplicity. One decision at a time. One reaction at a time. It's psychological overload that causes us to collapse. Reducing things to their simplest form is what creates stability. And maybe the most damaging thing we do is tie our identity too tightly to our performance. Our status, our competence, our image. When your identity feels heavy, any pressure can feel unbearable. But when your identity is light, pressure becomes manageable. Practice detaching your role from yourself. Remind yourself constantly, this situation, this outcome, does not define me. This instantly reduces defensive reactions and frees you up to act more rationally. This brings us to the most important internal shift of all. Stop asking yourself, how do I perform well? And start asking, how do I remain internally stable? Because performance always follows stability. It never works the other way around. Why does all this matter? Because these techniques apply everywhere. In difficult conversations with loved ones, in high-pressure workplace meetings, in moments of conflict. Most of our failures in life aren't intellectual, they're psychological. We don't fail because we don't know enough. We fail because our minds collapse before we can even use the knowledge we have. The people who master this internal world have a quiet advantage. At first, they're rarely noticed. They might even be underestimated. They aren't the loudest or most dramatic people in the room. But when the pressure arrives, when chaos breaks out, they are the only ones still thinking clearly. The most powerful minds aren't aggressive. They are calm when others are reactive. They are patient when others rush. They are silent when others reveal themselves. And that calm isn't natural. It's trained. So the real question isn't whether you're mentally strong. It's this: are you willing to train the parts of your mind that no one else can see? Because that is where the real advantage lives. Thanks for watching.